Citation 141 is "His only regret, I got caught." Chicago Tribune, May 17th, 1977. This citation, uh, where this shows up in the book, mainly serves as a kind of refresher, now that all of this is really, really starting to come together and showing itself as coming together. This portion was covered earlier on, but it's brought back up kind of as a refresher to um, further highlight how apparent these intersecting tentacles are at this point. Straight said he knows John Norman, who ran a national male prostitution ring employing young boys and helping put together a neater package to attract customers. He also said he wrote an article for Hermes magazine, a Chicago-based journal publishing philosophy and sex stories of boy love. Citation 142. Mexican tots smuggled for sadists. The Des Moines Register, May 24th, 1977. Martin, this is Lloyd Martin, said Hermes, a clandestine newsletter for the boy love market that is published in Chicago, is well known in Los Angeles. He also said boys are recruited in Los Angeles for a nationwide homosexual ring that is headquartered in Chicago. Citation 143. Priest charged in sex crimes out on, and the timer is blocking the number, so I believe it's 10,000. Could be wrong, but I believe it's 10,000. Priest charged in sex crimes out on $10,000 bail. The Delta Democrat Times, November 12th, 1976. An Episcopal priest charged in a 16-count indictment with staging and photographing homosexual orgies at his boys' farm surrendered to Franklin County authorities Thursday and was released on $10,000 bond. There you go. The Reverend Claudius L. Bud Vermeil was indicted earlier in the day on 11 felony and 5 misdemeanor counts by the county grand jury. Sheriff Jim Brazilian said Vermeil, 47, gave himself up voluntarily at the county jail. It was the second time in as many days that the priest had been arrested. Apologies if I'm getting some of this wrong here. 3 of the felony counts against Vermeil charged the priest with participating in crimes against nature. District Attorney General J. William Pope said, and the other 8 were for aiding and abetting crimes against nature. The misdemeanor counts include 4 charges of contributing to the delinquency of a minor and the other for using a juvenile in making an obscene film. The indictments cover a period from December of 1973 until October of 1976, Pope said. The district attorney said no arraignment date had been set, but he hoped to have the trial in Franklin County Criminal Court in January. Vermeil laughingly posed for pictures after his release, but made no statement. He was also arrested Wednesday night on a crime against nature charge, as authorities were fearful he might flee, but he was later released on $10,000 bond. 8 witnesses appeared before the grand jury Thursday, including Pete Bolden, one of Pope's investigators, and 2 young men who were present at the farm when agents conducted a raid a week ago. Vermeil was featured in the current issue of a National Church Weekly magazine, The Living Church. In the article, he tells about his home for wayward boys. He has operated the farm in the Alto community for the past 5 years. According to Pope, the priest showed the boys obscene films to get them sexually aroused, gave them liquor to make them less inhibited, photographed them engaging in homosexual acts, and sold the pictures to raise money for the farm. Reporters were shown Wednesday scores of pornographic pictures, Pope said, were confiscated during the raid. He also said a list of sponsors, along with their mailing addresses and some correspondence between Vermeil and sponsors, were seized. He had sponsors from Australia and Canada and virtually every state in the Union, Pope said. There were 275 active sponsors and 90 inactive. One of the letters Vermeil sent to a sponsor read in part, "Glad you enjoyed the slides. Glad you enjoyed the slides." Meaning film slides. Next month we will have some new ones. The letter mentioned 2 names, and one of the boys was described as having a beautiful body. The priest formed the home in 1971 as a sort of halfway house for juvenile offenders and juveniles from broken homes. The farm, which has no connection with the Episcopal Church, was sent children by the state correction department. Juvenile authorities was sent children by the state correction department, juvenile authorities, and by welfare agents, Pope said. Some of these kids were photographed and posed for movies, which were distributed throughout the nation, the district attorney said. Apparently some of the sponsors paid money and in return received these pornographic films and either engaged or attempted to engage in homosexual activities with these youngsters. He said that it may be months before it is determined which sponsors engage in homosexual activities and which thought they were contributing to a legitimate charity. Citation 143. Porno ring uses church tax laws. The Traverse City Record Eagle, April 4th, 1977. 3 supposedly charitable organizations have already been pinpointed by police as alleged fronts for the production of pornography using young boys. They are Boy Scout Troop 137 of New Orleans, Boys Farm Inc. of Alto, Tennessee, and Brother Paul's Children's Mission located on North Fox Island, which is part of Leelanau County just off Grand Traverse Bay. Authorities in Tennessee and Louisiana have already admitted that their welfare departments were duped into making payments to help support children used for homosexual and pornographic purposes, in the belief they were aiding legitimate charitable organizations. Not until police raids closed down the Boy Scout troop in Louisiana and the camp in Tennessee did the states realize the kind of camps they were subsidizing. Citation 144. Boys Farm branded National Porno Hub. Detroit Free Press, November 11th, 1976. Alto, Tennessee. A private rehabilitative home for teenage boys, operated by an ordained Episcopal priest, was a national center for homosexual pornography, District Attorney William Pope said Wednesday. Pope said he would go before the Franklin County Grand Jury Thursday seeking indictments against the Reverend Vermeil Jr. for various crimes against nature, including sodomy and oral sex, and for filming various homosexual acts. Pope said he had directed Tennessee state officers to arrest Vermeil on a warrant charging him with a 1974 offense. The offense was not identified. Pope said he ordered the arrest to prevent the priest from leaving the area. According to an affidavit by Pope filed with Circuit Judge Paul Swafford in Franklin County, Vermeil, quote, encourages, aids, and abets acts of fellatio and sodomy between students of the Boys Farm, and films and photographs said acts, end quote. The main thing we're charging with is making films of these children and sending them around the country, Pope said. Vermeil cannot be reached for comment. farm was raided last Thursday, and police said they took several juveniles into protective custody and seized Vermeil's records, including a list of what Pope said were as many as 200 sponsors. We also understand some of the sponsors came to the boys' farm and participated in the films themselves. Citation 145. We return to Star Child, A Man of Mystery, Traverse City Record Eagle, December 16, 1977. Tennessee authorities, however, say Star Child's name and the Church of the New Revelation turned up in their investigation into an illicit sex ring operating as the Tennessee Boys Farm. There is no church, said Pete Bolden, an investigator with the Tennessee Attorney General's office. It's just a referral agency which distributes the pornography around the country. The director of the farm, the Reverend Claudius Bud Vermeil Jr., has since been sentenced to 25 to 40 years in prison following his conviction on 12 counts of crimes against nature and abetting others in such crimes. Among the items seized in a raid on the farm were photographs and films depicting homosexual acts between youths at the farm, as well as a list of more than 270 active sponsors, many of whom allegedly visited the farm and also allegedly engaged in homosexual acts with the boys. Sheldon's name was listed among the sponsors. Citation 146. New warrant sought on Sheldon, Traverse City Record Eagle, December 16, 1976. The Reverend Bud Vermeil Jr., charged with 16 counts of criminal sexual conduct, is free on, I believe it's supposed to be $10,000, but $10,000 bond. Authorities said Sheldon was listed as a sponsor of that camp, so another mention of that. Citation 147. Tennessee boy farm linked to fake church. Traverse City Record Eagle, April 5, 1977. Tennessee authorities Monday confirmed Record Eagle reports that the Church of the New Revelation is a front organization in a nationwide child pornography network. Pete Bolden, an investigator with the Tennessee Attorney General's office, said the New Jersey Church also turned up in their investigation into Boys Farm Inc. The farm claimed to be a rehabilitation center for juvenile offenders, but authorities say it was actually a center for homosexual activities. There is no church, he said. It's just a referral agency which distributes the pornography around the country. Citation 148. Scoutmaster, aide, and third man arrested as sex deviants. The Indianapolis Star, September 11, 1976. New Orleans. A Boy Scout scoutmaster, his assistant, and a roommate were arrested yesterday on charges ranging from the homosexual rape of an 11-year-old to crimes against nature and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Police said the alleged activities may have involved as many as 30 boys. We don't know for sure how many people are involved or whether it is centered in the scout troop, said a police spokesman. It is thought 20 to 30 boys are involved. Arrest warrants were issued for 3 other men, including another assistant scoutmaster, and said they uncovered magazines, printed forms, and letters mailed from across the nation seeking young boys for sexual favors. Oh, and then it kind of repeats itself. A police spokesman said the case was uncovered when a photo processing laboratory reported receiving lewd film. It was just some good police work, said Tony Bonagura, a police spokesman. They got wind of some indecent literature being distributed among children. Then they just started some heavy footwork. It took them 3 weeks. Bonagura identified the arrested men as Richard S. Halverson, 41, Roy T. Woodall, 37, and Lloyd R. Schwagman, 18, all of New Orleans. Halverson, identified as head scoutmaster of Troop 137, was charged with 2 counts of aggravated crime against nature, obscenity, and indecent behavior with a juvenile. Woodall, identified as an assistant scoutmaster, was accused of the aggravated homosexual rape of an 11-year-old, indecent behavior with a juvenile, contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile, and aggravated crime against nature. Schwagman, who police said was living with Halverson, was accused of contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. Investigators identified the men being sought as Harry O. Kramer, an assistant scoutmaster, and Richard A. Pass and Robert Lang, all of New Orleans. "I'm shocked that this kind of thing could happen," said James Johnson, executive director of the New Orleans Boy Scout chapter. "It's a real slap at the people who are trying to do a good job." Citation 149. Victimized through homosexual ring. The Hayes Daily News, September 12, 1976. Police said they discovered filing cabinets with letters dating back to 1956 from homosexuals around the country asking for young boys. They also found a card file with the names and ages of more than 100 boys and computer questionnaires for the youths to fill out asking their sexual preferences. Officers identified the arrested men as Richard S. Halverson, 41, Roy T. Woodall, 37, and Lloyd R. Schwagman, 18, all of New Orleans. Halverson, identified as headmaster of Boy Scout Troop 137, was charged with 2 counts of aggravated crime against nature, obscenity, and indecent behavior with a juvenile. Woodall, identified as an assistant scoutmaster, was accused of the aggravated homosexual rape of an 11-year-old, indecent behavior with a juvenile, contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile, and aggravated crime against nature. Schwagman, who police said was living with Halverson, was accused of contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. The 3 men were taken to city jail, and Halverson's foster sons, aged 9 and 11, were taken to a juvenile shelter. Citation 150. Boy Scout orgy leaders arrested. San Antonio Express, September 11, 1976. Stansberry and Detective Frank Wykes confiscated card files of names and addresses of boys in other states, apparently based on boy-to-boy pen pal contacts the men made through pornographic magazines. In addition, officers seized homemade snapshots of sex orgies. Officers said the investigation started when a commercial film developer called them about a pornographic film involving boys. Citation 151. Claims that teenagers exploited. The Daily Herald Sun Herald, November 11, 1976. And evidence in the New Orleans case touched off investigations in other states as well, they said. The Tennessee investigation led to the arrest Wednesday in Tullahoma, Tennessee, of an Episcopal priest, the Reverend Claudius Ira Bud Vermeil, 47, who ran Boys Farm, Inc. Sheriff Jim Brazelton said he booked Vermeil for allegedly committing a crime against nature. The Tennessee case stemmed from the photographs and correspondence detectives found in the New Orleans raid. Among the letters, they said, was one from the Reverend Mr. Vermeil. One photograph showed Vermeil sitting by a fireplace in a normal setting with a group of boys. Everyone was fully clothed, detectives said. But they said they recognized the institutional setting and theorized the letter which invited Halverson and others to visit the Tennessee home accompanied the photograph. Citation 152. 7 arrested in plot to rape boys. The Amarillo Globe-Times, October 6, 1976. Police said documents seized at the time of a raid on a New Orleans house in early September indicated applications had been submitted to state and federal agencies for money to establish homes for boys. Citation 153, The Californian Connection in Youth Pornography. Des Moines Register, May 24th, 1977. As an indication of the close links that exist among child sex abusers, police said Woodall's address book contained the name of John Norman, now in the Illinois State Prison at Pontiac. According to Chicago police, Norman operated a ring that sent boys around the country to serve a network of homosexual clients. FBI Freedom of Information Act request for documents on Philip Paskey, FOI/PA number 1352511-001, date received on November 1st, 1976. This is page 36. To investigator, redacted. Attached you will find a copy of a listing of all porno suppliers involved in our case. Also, you will find a listing of all the chicken men in your area who corresponded with the arrested subjects in our case. Please keep in mind that these addresses may not be current in all cases, as these subjects obviously move around quite a bit. I apologize for the delay in sending you this material. However, we've been up to our neck in work. If I can be of any further assistance, please call or write. List of chicken men in your area. It's all redacted. P.S. We recently received a literature from the Delta Project and another group known as the Hermes Gay Magazine. It is apparent from the literature that the chicken men are attempting to set up a large-scale operation in your area. Sincerely yours, redacted, Juvenile Division, New Orleans Police Department. So what's basically happening here is New Orleans, upon finding this new Norman connection through Woodall's address book, is essentially relaying this all to Illinois, where Norman is at this time, setting up shop. FBI Freedom of Information Act request for documents on Philip Paskey, FOI PA number 1352511-001, memo, this sent February 11th, 1977. This is page 85 of the request. Philip Paskey is a subject of Chicago File 1662540, captioned John David Norman, aka et al., John Shanks, Philip Paskey, Itar Prostitution, OO, Chicago. That investigation concerned the Delta Project, headed by Paskey and Norman, a male prostitution ring involving young males with operations in New Orleans, California, and Chicago. Newsletters were sent out regarding the boys available and other Delta Project services. John David Norman is a well-known figure in homosexual-type pornography, particularly involving young males. Delta Project literature gave the project's telephone number as 312-528-3375, which listed Paskey at 707 West Wrightwood. That telephone number has now been disconnected. Philip Paskey was placed on 5 years felony probation for murder on January 7, 1976, and since that time has been arrested for battery by Chicago police. John Norman was convicted of contributing to the sexual delinquency of a minor and sentenced to 4 years and 1 day. Norman has an extensive criminal record, primarily for sex offenses and obscene matters. The Cook County State's Attorney's Office has conducted an extensive investigation into the Delta Project. This is Illinois. However, that investigation has been closed following conviction of Norman and the closing of the Delta Project. Efforts to interview Paskey have thus far not been successful. Citation 154, The Californian Connection in Youth Pornography. Des Moines Register, May 24th, 1977. They said Halverson and Woodall went to New Orleans from Coral Gables, Florida, where they had worked as maintenance men for the Adelphi Academies, identified by Florida police as a former male prostitution front that was recently sold to legitimate operators. Peter Bradford, formerly a co-owner of the Adelphi Academies, is among the 19 men charged in New Orleans. Sergeant Tony Raimondo of the Coral Gables Police said evidence shows that Halverson went to a number of mothers in New Orleans and recruited 6 boys for the Adelphi Academies. He told the women he can get free scholarships for their sons to a Coral Gables school that would provide better education than they were getting. New Orleans police said Bradford then flew to New Orleans and had sex with one of the boys and met the parents. Bradford flew back to Coral Gables, and the 6 New Orleans boys subsequently enrolled at the academy. Bradford is charged with 2 counts of aggravated crimes against nature in New Orleans, but has forfeited bond and remained in Florida, where no charges have been filed against him. Citation 155. Dade man is linked to scout sex inquiry. The Miami Herald, May 18, 1977. Sergeant Raimondo said that between January and June 1976, Bradford recruited young boys in New Orleans for enrollment in the Adelphi School, telling parents that they were to receive scholarships here. Sergeant Raimondo said he took statements from 4 children aged 11 to 17. There are no Florida charges pending against Bradford, a one-time travel agent. Citation 156. How ruses lure victims to child pornographers. Chicago Tribune, May 17, 1977. And this section actually was verbatim featured in, I believe it was 154. Might be one off on that, but I believe 154, but it's crucial to 156. So it's repeated here. Bradford is charged with 2 counts of aggravated crimes against nature in New Orleans, but has forfeited bond and remained in Florida, where no charges have been filed against him.